Having emotion is a very important part in every individual. Emotion is almost present in every moment of our lives. It has a huge part on how we can communicate with the other. Emotion can play an important role in how you think and how you behave. The emotion you feel each day can compel you to take action and influence the decision you make about your life. These are some of the reasons why emotion is important in our life. We all know that there are a lot of ways on how our emotion will dry out. In this ebook that we will review entitled Emotion Vampire, Dealing with People Who Drain You Dry, written by Albert J. Bernstein, PhD. In this ebook talks about the different types of emotional vampire. Inalin tulad ng author ang vampire sa mga taong nagdidrain ng emotion ng isang tao. And alam naman natin na ang vampire sila yung mga nagdidrain ng dugo ng isang tao hanggang sa maubos na sila. And in the book, ang dinidrain nila is yung emotion ng isang tao. And there will be 5 part of different vampire na mapag-uusapan dito. And these are antisocial type, histrionic type, narcissistic type, obsessive-compulsive type, and last, yung paranoid type. In this ebook, it will teach us about them, that this kind of vampire or people exist nang hindi natin namamalayan, and understand them deeper and how they can affect our emotion and how we will deal with them.
Outlining its content. In Chapter 1, Children of the Night, pag-uusapan dito kung sino-sino ba ang emotional vampires, kung totoo ba na vampires sila, and kung ano-ano ang types ng vampires. In Chapter 2, Maturity and Mental Health, pag-uusapan dito ang 3 essential attitudes ng maturity and mental health, kung ano ang dahilan kung bakit sila naging emotional vampires, if evil ba sila or immature, and ano ang gagawin mo if you see yourself among the vampires. In Chapter 3, The Ways of Vampires, malalaman natin dito sa chapter na to na how emotional vampires are different and more dangerous than other annoying people. Sinabi din dito kung ano yung ways ng vampires and paano mo mapoprotektahan yung sarili mo sa mga vampires. In Chapter 4, Dark Powers, it's about hypnosis, the structure of magic, recognizing hypnosis when you see it, danger signs of hypnosis, and ano ang gagawin mo kapag na-discover mo na you've been hypnotized. So, sa part 1, Lovable Rouge, the antisocial types. Malalaman natin dito kung paano mare-recognize ang antisocial vampires. In Chapter 5, Vampire Daredevils. Dito natin malalaman kung ano ang characteristics ng Daredevils, how vampires keep you coming back for more, and also the 10 elements of vampire fighting strategy resisting the forbidden fruit. In Chapter 6, Vampire Used Car Salesman, malalaman natin dito how used car salesmen operate and yung 7 basic patterns na karaniwang sinusunod ng vampire sales. Sa chapter na ito din ay nabanggit kung paano malalaman kapag may nagsisinungaling sa'yo, and the 10 elements of vampire fighting strategy. Protect yourself from predators in polyester. In Chapter 7, Vampire Bullies, nabanggit dito kung anong klaseng tao ang mga vampire bullies and how to deal with bullies. Ipapakita din dito ang 10 elements of vampire fighting strategy. Don't let vampires kick sand in your face. And lastly, dito sinabi kung ano ang pwedeng therapy for antisocial vampires.
Part 2 of the ebook is Histrionic Type, Show Business, Vampire Style. In this part, there will be 2 chapters and malalaman natin what it's like to be histrionic and their dilemma. And now, in Chapter 8, sa Chapter 8 is dito natin makikilala yung mga type ng vampire that will manipulate us by making us part of their shows. Papakita niya sa atin na we are in their level, but at the end, sila yung bida sa sarili nilang show. And di natin to namamalayan kasi nga, na-manipulate na nila tayo. And then also, in this chapter, will show us the 10 elements of vampire fighting strategy, how to keep from joining the cast, and malalaman natin on how to step out to the vampire never-ending drama by making a new script. In chapter 9 is yung mga passive-aggressive vampire. Dito natin makikilala yung mga klase ng vampire na gusto lagi ng approval ng galing sa ibang tao. The hypnosis is wherein nagke-create sila ng alternative reality and how they can affect their behavior in the relationship. We will understand the concept of the high self-esteem syndrome. And last is ipapaintindi sa atin on how to endure the meek and the reason why we don't get mad sa mga taong passive-aggressive. And next part is yung part 3. The narcissistic type, big egos, small everywhere else. There will be 2 chapter in this part and malalaman natin dito kung ano nga ba ang pagiging narcissistic and their dilemma. And then, sa chapter 10, pag-uusapan natin yung mga taong legends in their own mind, na sila kung saan ay bida sa sarili nilang mundo, that narcissistic legends see themselves as more talented and intelligent than the other people. Next is how they prevent themselves from being succeeding because narcissistic legends are bright sila and creative but alam nila na hindi ito sapat para mag-succeed sa mga career nila. And their hypnosis is that nilalayo nila yung mga powerful people and nilalapitan nila yung mga weak na people kasi nga gusto nila sila yung mga bida and they want to be the best. And next is how to socialize narcissistic legends. Dito dapat malaman ng mga narcissistic legend na to make themselves do things that they don't want to do and have to learn to sell themselves and their ideas by paying enough attention to the other people to know what they are likely to buy. And the last is yung top 10 elements wherein ituturo sa kanila kung saan dapat magkaroon sila ng kahit konting work ethics.
We're outlining the chapters in chapter 11 to 13. So in chapter 11, it looks into the subject of emotional vampires and those who encourage their harmful conduct. The chapter begins by discussing the reasons why people enter these sorts of relationship, such as wanting to fix the emotional vampire's problem or experiencing a sense of control or power in being required. The focus then changes to the role of the facilitator and how they frequently assist the emotional vampire by providing them with continual attention and affirmation, even when it is destructive to themselves. This conduct can create a cycle of dependency in which the emotional vampire becomes increasingly reliant on the facilitator to meet their emotional demands. The part of the book talks about multiple positive ways to live a relationship and get away from this pattern. This might entail setting boundaries, making time for self-care and personal growth, obtaining professional advice and assistance, and if necessary, leaving the relationship. The chapter also discusses the concept of twin vampires, where two emotional vampires may form a toxic relationship and feeding off each other's negative energy. Overall, the chapter 11 emphasizes the significance of detecting and eliminating bad patterns in emotional vampire relationships, such as well as aiming toward healthy and rewarding connection with others. For chapter 12, the writer delves into the notion of the vampire hunter in emotional vampire, which refers to persons who are very sensitive and skilled at discovering and dealing with emotional vampires. This is so-called vampire hunters. Setting boundaries, practicing self-care, and getting help from supportive persons are among the tactics discussed in the chapter for detecting emotional vampires and protecting oneself from their impact. The necessity of identifying one's own vulnerabilities and taking proactive actions to preserve emotional balance and well-being is emphasized by the writer itself. Overall, the chapter offers useful tips for dealing with emotional vampires and keeping a healthy emotional state. And in the chapter 13, Emotional Vampires, the author describes how emotional vampires feed on people's idea and spirituality in order to meet their own emotional needs. The chapter also discusses the many varieties of spiritual vampires and how to identify and deal with them, such as the religious fanatic, New Age guru, and the pseudo-psychologist. To defend oneself against spiritual vampires, the author highlights the significance of setting boundaries and being conscious of your own beliefs. Bernstein also emphasizes the need of self-care and discovering healthy methods to connect with spirituality.
Chapter 1. Who are these emotional vampires? Emotional vampires is a person who drains others emotionally by manipulating them or constantly seeking attention and sympathy. They are called emotional vampires not because they are really a real vampire, but because they act like a vampire in a way they drain the emotions of people around them, not their blood. These emotional vampires have the characteristics of a personality disorder, in which they have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking and behaving. In DSM-5, it has 11 different personality disorders, but here we'll give a glimpse on 5 personality disorders that mostly cause trouble in daily life, which are antisocial, histrionic, narcissistic, obsessive-compulsive, and paranoid. Antisocial vampires are people who love anything that is stimulating, like parties, drugs, and sex. For others, if they heard antisocial, they thought it is associated with people hating exciting and sources of fun or hate socializing. But in psychology, it is related to sociopathy. They don't hate socializing, they just don't care about it. They show no regard for the right and wrong and ignore the rights and feelings of others. While histrionic vampires are individuals who are dramatic and everything they do or show is just a show. They did not truly show their real self and they tend to seek and live on the approval and attention of others. Narcissistic vampires are individuals who are obsessed with their own self, in which they view themselves as being smartest, talented, and by doing so, they will try to catch anyone's attention or everyone's attention for them to fulfill their sense of self-entitlement. And lastly, the obsessive-compulsive vampires are an individual who are addicted to safety, in which they think that it will be achieved by having control over anything or everyone. In Chapter 3, The Ways of Vampires. Vampires are different from us, yet some people think that they are just like regular people like us, but they are not. Through knowing and classifying the ways of the vampires, that what makes them different from us will give us an idea and understanding on how we will be able to distinguish that they are really different from us. Also, through that, we will be able to know how we could deal with them. So emotional vampires have different ways to manipulate us, like making human their prey, in the way of how they interact with them. They will use their tactics of manipulating an individuals, like adapting behavior, personality, knowing some of an individual's secrets to manipulate them, and by making an individual to expose to them so that they will drive a person to adopt their manipulative and draining behavior to manipulate and control people around them just to meet their own needs without regarding the well-being or the feeling of the person, as long as they meet their needs and wants. To identify whether an individual is a vampire or an emotional vampire, an individual must pay close attention to the action and its behaviors. And to deal with them before any conflicts arise, it is important to recognize their desires and needs so that we will be able to anticipate and mitigate the conflicts before they arise. Also, it is important to set a clear boundaries and to prioritize one's own need and emotional well-being while being considerate of the needs of others. So in Chapter 4, Part 1, the Antisocial Type. So how to recognize antisocial vampires? Social vampires are social creatures. They enjoy being around people, especially in fun and exciting situations and even in events like parties. Many have thought that antisocial means to hate parties or fun activities, but the truth is they're not. However, antisocial vampires also have a hard time in trusting others, as they believe that everyone is motivated by self-interest. These vampires are often charming and attractive, yet their qualities make it difficult to recognize them as emotional vampires, as they often appear to be just fun-loving and exciting people. A vampire identification checklist is a checklist not used to make a medical diagnosis, but to help an individual to identify and recognize the person around them or in their lives who exhibit patterns of behavior associated with emotional vampires. It is only intended for self-replication and assessment that is allowing an individual to understand their relationships and interaction with other people. By recognizing the traits and behavior associated with emotional vampires, individuals can take steps to protect themselves from these individuals and to limit their exposure to negative draining interactions. Chapter 7. The Histrionic Types. Histrionics are virtuous of polite conversation, so interesting that they make you feel interesting. One of their finest inventions is small talk, the miracle glue that holds conversations together. They also invented gossips. In our current situation, gossipers are everywhere, and they are commonly called marites, means Mari, anong latest. These people enjoy sharing stories, talking about someone, and many more. But can we consider them as a person that has a histrionic personality disorder? Well, it is no. Though gossiping is a way of HPD to seek attention and manipulate others, but it is important to know that not all people with HPD are necessarily gossips, and not all gossips have HPD. So what it's like to be histrionic? Histrionic are individuals who have a strong desire for attention and approval from others. They struggle with a sense of self as they feel that they need to present a certain image or a persona to others in order to be liked and accepted. However, this can lead to fragile sense of self, with a constant fear of rejection or disapproval. This can cause them to avoid the situations or people that might trigger their insecurities. Histrionics may struggle with maintaining a sense of control and connection. Excessive need for attention and approval can be emotionally draining and can cause histrionics to feel anxious, depressed when they are not the center of attention. It is difficult for them to control and maintain healthy relationship with others. It can be an exhausting experience for both the individual and those around them.
Part 3. The narcissistic types, big egos, small everywhere else. The narcissistic types. Narcissistic personality disorder was part of cluster B. This personality is about a people who believe in themselves, need too much attention, and want to be admired, at maaari rin silang mahirapan o walang kakayahang umunawa ng feelings ng ibang tao. And dahil na rin siguro they are in themselves, and if narcissists are in love with themselves, and they think that they are better than other people, kaya nagkakaroon ng tendency na mahirapan umunawa ng ibang tao. Also, they feel that they deserve privilege and special treatment from others. Narcissistic vampires have a disorder. They believe the universe revolves around them, unlike antisocial and histrionic. Narcissistic vampires just want to live out their fantasies of being smart, most talented, and all-around best people in the world. However, most narcissistic vampires have a treatment. Narcissistic vampires are quiet, willing to work hard, glorify themselves. Vampires are usually proposed and goal-directed. According to books, their thoughts change and 3 times are obsessed with control. They are intelligent, responsible, hardworking, a bit of shy. So, while they always seem to be English, still sila yung typical na vampires na perfectionist, and they always correct you. Dapat lahat tama, at bawal yung mali sa work. Meron silang sariling rules at dapat kailangan mong i-follow ang mga ito para maiwasan ang pagkainis nila. Because they easily attach themselves to anyone who does not follow the same rules about work and morality that they do. Remember, when a perfectionist always wants to meet their own high expectation. So be careful on your actions because these vampires always feel overwhelmed, underappreciated, and disappointed as the lucky of others. Part 4. The obsessive-compulsive types. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a mental health disorder that occurs when person experience recurring unwanted and unpleasant thoughts, feelings, image, or sensations. Obsessions that they result in repetitive behavior or mental act, compulsion. In the ebook, Obsessive-compulsive vampire, there are different types of personality. Obsessive-compulsive vampire are something being terrified of mystery, overwhelmed by trivial tasks, and resentful of other people, lack of attention to details. Kaya siguro takot sila sa mistake dahil yung attention nila is more on work na kung saan nagiging perfectionist sila dahil ayaw nila ng pagkakamali. They are attempting to control everything to make it perfect for them. Why they do always things in do? According to book, perfectionists and puritans are obsessed with control. They are intelligent, responsible, hardworking, a bit of life. So, why they always seems to be angry? Kasi sila yung typical na vampires na perfectionist and they always correct you. Dapat lahat tama at bawal yung mali sa work. Meron silang sariling rules at dapat kailangan mong i-follow ang mga ito para maiwasan ang pagkainis nila. Because they easily attach themselves to anyone who does not follow the same rules about work and morality that they do. Remember, when a perfectionist always wants to meet their own high expectations. So be careful on your actions because these vampires always feel overwhelmed, underappreciated, and disappointed as the lucky of others. Perfection is a person who strives for perfection, with high standards or expectation in everything like work, person, also themselves. Puritans think that the world is unkind to moral people, so they feel justified in returning the favor. Part 5. The paranoid type, doing things that others can't do. The paranoid type. Paranoid personality disorder is a part of cluster A. It is a mental health condition marked by a long-term pattern of distrust and suspicion of others without adequate reason to be suspicious. Paranoia. Paranoid vampires don't understand the concept of trust, but don't make a lie or hide something with them because paranoid vampires draw you in with their perspectiveness. They see confusing and uncertain details of life so clearly. Later, they drain you because paranoid vampires search in vain for purity and truth. Green Eye Master. Paranoid vampires hate lies and lie reveals everything to them. And when paranoid vampires feel jealousy, they asking you a question at doon niya malalaman kung totoo ba yung sinasabi. And the Green Eye Master, like Drake, play to their victims' fantasy of being stripped of their teeth and taken care of. They believe in complexity with an ambiguity.
detailed evaluation of emotional vampires. Emotional vampires are people who feed off the emotions of others and can leave you feeling drained, exhausted, and frustrated. Dealing with emotional vampires can be a challenging task and requires a careful evaluation of their behavior. Here is a detailed evaluation of emotional vampires and how to deal with them. The identification of the emotional vampire. The first step in dealing with emotional vampire is to know about them. See, emotional vampires are usually people who are needy, dramatic, and attention-seeking people. They tend to manipulate others to get what they want and often have a negative worldview on life. Emotional vampires tend to drain people's energy and emotions by incessantly talking about their issues, demanding attention and approval, and causing drama. They frequently put demands on other people's time, resources, and emotions without even reciprocating. Emotional vampires may also act victims, blaming others for their troubles. We need to set limits when dealing with emotional vampires. It is critical to establish limits. You must be clear about your boundaries and convey them effectively. You can, for example, inform them that you have limited time to listen to their concerns, or that you will not accept their manipulative conduct. Self-care is essential, especially dealing with these vampires. May be emotionally and psychologically draining. It is critical to prioritize self-care and to look after emotional and mental health. This might involve things like taking time for yourself, practicing relaxing methods, and also limit contact. If an emotional vampire continues to sap your vitality, you may need to break your links or limit your contact. This might be tough, especially if the individual is a family member or close friend, but it is necessary to safeguard your emotional and mental health. And for last one, finally, assessing emotional vampires, establishing boundaries, practicing self-care, and restricting contact can all be effective ways of coping with people who drain you dry. Remember that it is all right to defend yourself and your emotional and mental well-being.